And welcome once again, another edition here of the Decline of Wrestling Civilization on LuchaCentral.com. Joining me once again, Eric Mutter, the cult icon. How we doing today, Whalers fan?
Yes, we're doing great. The NHL back on ESPN. Gary Thorne and Bill Clement coming back.
I wanted to celebrate with you, which is why I lit up some AEW fireworks with my incense here.
Oh God. We were full disclosure to all the fans. We were laughing about this before the show, and now we're laughing about it on the show.
Yeah, I didn't know how I was going to bring in the incense into the topic, but it really just fit in there. So yes, the ESPN news, you were telling me about that earlier yesterday afternoon, that it sounds like hockey's coming not only to USA, which has been causing havoc for WWE's schedule, but now on ESPN as well. So hopefully if there is any crossover wrestling fans who like hockey as well, you'll get a lot more access to it in the States.
Yes, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear the music again. I mean, that's how I grew up as a hockey fan, watching the NHL on ESPN here. I think that's part of the reason it declined a little bit in the States, because it moved to the Outdoor Life Network and then the NBC Sports Network. And, you know, NBC's done a very good job with it, but being on ESPN, ESPN and NBC, good double whammy right there for them.
I seem to recall they were on a channel called Versus. Does that ring any bells?
Yes, that's what became the NHL.
Gotcha.
The NBC Sports Network.
The only reason I knew about that was there was around the time I was getting into UFC hardcore, and they were doing a couple of shows per year on Versus, so I saw the crossover on that.
There you go. Now the NHL and UFC on the same network.
Coincidentally enough, the first time I ever saw my favorite mixed martial artist, John Jones, all controversies aside, was on a Versus card, so that always stood out to me.
By the way, I would like to congratulate Jan on his well-deserved victory this past Saturday. I do want to say this. I watched that fight, and if I were Dana White, I would have fired all three of those commentators after the first round. They were awful. They are just they make Michael Cole sound like Gordon Soley.
Oh boy.
And I just they're talking about oh man, Jan's breathing heavily. Who cares? He's winning the fight.
Yeah, but you still got to point out the fact that that could lead to him losing steam faster than Sterling would have. Obviously, that's not how the fight went.
No,
but it could have. I don't know. I hear Joe Rogan get a lot of lambasting from online fans, and I guess just like the way I handle WWE criticism, I just enjoy it. I find he's very entertaining. He knows his stuff, and he teaches me a lot as a fan who's I've only been into it for about 10 and 11 years, whereas the UFC's been around for 27 years now or something. So
yeah, I mean, I thought he was good when I first saw him, and he's turned into like Matt Stryker, where he started good, and then it just went.
Well, that kind
bigger explosion than the explosion we had.
I was about to say, that's kind of how the AEW show went, where it was on a pretty decent high, according to reviews, but it ended on a pretty low note. Now, I did not watch it. I'm going to be honest about that. AEW is just not a promotion that really gets my energy going. So I'm not going to take any low blows other than that obvious one. But tell me, what was your impression of that ending? Because I know there was a lot of, I don't want to say controversy, but a lot of factors into it. Like Eddie Kingston was saving Jon Moxley from the explosion, and then the explosion didn't really happen. How do you think that's going to move forward for AEW and Dynamite tonight?
Oh, my God. Where to begin on this? I mean, look, it sucked. Let's just call it as it is. It sucked. And by it sucked, I mean the explosion. The show itself was a really good, I would say, great show.
Okay.
I would say it would have been on par. It's still better than that All Out show where Matt Hardy nearly died last year and such. And it would have been on par with the other shows, but that ending,
really,
it's like I think it was a Vince McMahon quote. Nobody remembers anything but the ending, right? Isn't that the Vince McMahon quote? Somebody has said it at some point.
It's possible. It was actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was planning to counter argue, because I assumed you were going to be very forgiving, because I find that's your nature when it comes
to No, not with this one.
And I was going to point out how you gave WWE a hard time with their ending to the Roman Reigns Kevin Owens match a few weeks back at the Royal Rumble.
First thing I thought about when that actually, it was the second thing. The first thing I thought about was the Bray Seth thing. The DQ in the cell. And then I was like, no, this is still better than that thing. Not by a lot, but it's still better.
I would say it's better from what I've heard, only because the match ended, at least. The story was told. I know there was an extra chapter that was told because of the explosion, but the main reason people tuned in was for that match. That was the main event. And sure, the explosion might have been part of that, but let's be fair, it's just part of the match. The match itself was over by that point.
Yes, the match was awesome. If the match, if nothing had happened after the match, this would have been remembered as an all-time classic match. And it still technically is, because the match was over, but they're all tied in together and such. I mean, look, let me put it to you this way. If this had gone off perfectly, this match, the moment afterwards, would have been one of the most memorable things ever in American wrestling.
And now it still is.
It still is. It's just for the opposite reason. Like, they couldn't have planned it out any better. You know, they have this great match. Omega wins. Him, Gallows and Anderson always finding themselves involved as secondary characters in these over-the-top matches with explosions in them. You know, they beat up Moxley. There's a minute left till the big explosion. So as someone who loves the Terry Funk Atsushi Onita match, I've seen this movie before. And I know that, you know, Moxley's going to be in the ring, and it's like somebody's going to come out to shield him from the blast. And I have no idea who it's going to be. And then you see Eddie Kingston walk out. It's like, my God, this is perfect. They had that unbelievable feud built on their past relationship. This is going to kick off Eddie as an emotional baby face, and they do everything perfectly right. And then it hits zero, and then you get everybody's talking about the sparklers, but the sparklers were going to be part of the thing anyway. That wasn't the issue. The issue is they had a couple of explosives go off, and they were nothing. Now, why was it nothing? You know, because the speculation was, well, did they just underestimate what they needed, or was there a malfunction? And this is what makes it even more devastating. It was a malfunction.
Right.
They had tested this wisely, I guess, a few days before, and it went off perfectly with what they had used then. And then when they used this other setup, for whatever reason, it didn't work. So that just, it makes it even worse in a way, because it's not actually anybody's fault. It just went wrong. But it doesn't matter that it just went wrong. It only matters that it was a dud.
It's such an unfortunate thing that just crossed my mind, but that also describes the Owen Hart situation. Again, very unfortunate. I'm not making comparisons because this is a storyline malfunction, and obviously the other one was worse. But it just reminded me where so many things could be protected, and then just the one thing that goes wrong that isn't exactly anyone's fault, but it could have been prevented anyways. It's so bizarre. Sorry, I shouldn't have honestly brought that up.
I mean, I get what you're going for, but it is obviously a different situation. Sure. And at least, you know, with that thing, obviously there was no coming back. You know, some people have been treating this like Vince is going to buy AEW in the next few days.
Okay, fans are stupid. We've established this.
Like, people, they're going to be just fine. This is not the end of we just touched upon it. The Roman Reigns thing, the Bray Wyatt thing. WWE has at least 5 of these things a year, and they come away just
I wouldn't
fine.
say they're as this big 5 times a year,
Oh,
but at
no,
least
no.
once a year, probably.
No, that is true. And obviously, look, expectations for WWE are lower. Expectations for AEW are higher.
From a certain segment of the audience, I would agree.
Sure.
I wouldn't say overall.
Sure, that's true. That's a good point. That we'll go with your saying over mine there. But like obviously, look, AEW pay-per-views have on the whole been critically acclaimed every time out, with the exception of the one with Matt Hardy. And if nothing had happened to Matt Hardy, I think that one would have been received very well too. Possibly. And I think it would have been the same with this one if the explosion goes off right. But it didn't. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do now. I think you can get out of it.
Well, they have already leaned towards the fact that Kenny Omega botched the making of this bomb or whatever it might have been.
Right.
Which I guess is salvageable. It as someone who hasn't paid attention to the story, I think it's pretty crappy. But at the same time, at least they've been showing segments of Kenny and Don Callis building the bomb and being part of that process. So it kind of fits the story. But at the same time, it doesn't. It's kind of dumb. I don't know.
Well, I mean, what can you really do here? You either have to come up with something like that, or you just have to move on.
Ignore that it ever happened.
Or ignore that it ever happened. I honestly think that they should embrace the hilarity of it all. Some of the problems in wrestling history, like when WWE and WCW had a lot of these moments too.
Oh boy.
They would then take it too seriously afterwards. I think in this day and age, you want to kind of just embrace, hey, yeah, we did mess this up. Mistakes are going to happen. It happened to us. It's actually pretty funny. Like, I was embarrassed as hell. I was sweating when it happened. And then like a few hours later, I was like, yeah, this is pretty funny, actually.
Well, that's the only way to accept it as a fan. I totally understand that. Not sure for the promotion, though I understand your thinking of going forward with it that way. My concern here at this point is, while I wouldn't agree with Cody that they've destroyed NXT all year long, at this point, NXT has a pretty good card set up for this week. Do you think the disappointment from Revolution might actually give NXT a boost because of just the big card and then the disappointment from that explosion?
No, because when the Matt Hardy thing happened on the Dynamite after that, when everybody was mad at them, they did 1 million viewers, the highest rating they've done pretty much since the start. Okay. If anything, over the years, and WWE has proven this too, people tune in more when shit goes badly because they want to then see what they do to correct it, or they just want to see if it gets worse.
They want to see what they'll do next.
Yes.
From Private Parts there, for other movie fans.
So I think that's what's going to happen. I think they're both going to do well because both shows are really good. They look really good to me, both of them.
We'll get into that in a second. Yeah. I don't feel like Dynamite really matches up, but again, we're talking about the top titles of both divisions on NXT, and that's not the same. But either way, let's go through the rest of what happened in Revolution quickly. Now, Hikaru Shida, she defended her title and won, but then she got attacked by Nyla Rose after that. So are they looking forward to another chapter between Rose and Shida?
No, because you left out that there were 2 other people that attacked Shida.
Okay, who else did? I apologize.
Maki Ito from the Japanese side of the bracket in the women's tournament. They brought her over. She was one of the surprises on the show. And Britt Baker was the other. So I believe this is now the beginning of the Britt Baker Hikaru Shida buildup, right?
Fair enough. Okay. Well, I know that they're building up to a 6-woman tag on Dynamite tonight. So we'll get into that in a second too. Okay, very good. Now the only thing I really heard that would have turned me off had I watched it, I want to talk about the tag team title match, because that started off the show. And apparently, you correct me if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm misunderstanding it, there was a spot where Matt Jackson takes a baseball bat shot to, I think, the back of the head or something, then gets MJF's finisher, and then kicks out. Is this correct?
I don't believe that's correct, no. I believe he got... Yeah, no, I don't remember a baseball bat. I could be mistaken though.
Okay.
And he did not take MJF's finisher after that. He took was the Heat Seeker, but that's not MJF's finisher.
It's a transition move for him.
Yeah, it's a transition move. MJF's finisher is like an arm bar. Or something.
the salt of the earth or something. Arm bar, I remember. Yeah.
So whoever gave you that was mistaken. I know. I know it's one of two people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a bone to pick with one of them.
Nah, it's fine. Anyways, he's listening now, so look, he's talking with you, guy, but sometimes you're incorrect and you don't know it.
Hello.
Other than that, was this a good match?
Yeah, I thought it was like the fourth best match on the show. I honestly thought everything except the ending and the ladder match. I was not a fan of the ladder match. I thought everything was good to great, really.
Well, let me rephrase this. Would this have been a good match for this guy?
But the Bucks are in it, so no.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was going to say. Now, the issue I had is if that segment did take place, that little spot I just described, that really stems from the problem I have with AEW, where I find so many of the matches have this pattern, this formula of these crazy spots and kickouts. And the way I relate it to is it's like a generation of wrestlers who watched WrestleMania 25 and saw what The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels did in the main event, or the match that stole the show from that WrestleMania, and then implemented that as the formula for all their matches. And it's completely forgetting that what made it special in 2007 when that took place, or no, 2009.
2009,
was the fact that it wasn't the formula, that it was a standout one night only, that's the two best of all time, or arguably we'll say, at the WrestleMania. That's when you do all these crazy kickouts, and then when it happens every week, it loses at least for me, it loses interest. Now, that said, if that spot didn't happen, then maybe I'm
no. I believe what happened is he was hit in the back. I think Wardlow hit him in the back.
Okay.
With like a forearm or something. It could have been with the bat, but if it was with the bat, it was to the back. It was certainly not to the head.
Gotcha.
And again, it was not a finishing move. MJF hit him with one of his moves that everybody kicks out of every single time.
Fair enough. Okay, then let's move on from that. They had the cinematic match, the street fight. How did that come off? Because obviously they needed to protect Sting's body. He is of quite an advanced age for a wrestler.
He's still good, amazingly enough, though.
Well, arguably. But okay, so how did this match turn out? Because I heard one really nice feat of strength where Brian Cage had Darby up and then climbed stairs with him in a suplex.
Magnificent moment.
Beautiful.
This was on par with the Boneyard match.
Okay.
Like if you think of the cinematic matches as like cinematic matches, I think those are the two top tier matches right there. This was really, really great.
Okay.
Really great. Darby apparently put most of it together.
That's what he claimed the next day, yeah.
Yeah. Well, nobody's denied it, so I'm going to assume that he did. You know? I would think if like Sting had done it, he'd be like, "Hey, oh no, I had a little hand in that one right there too," or something. I'm sure maybe Cage was like, "Yeah, I'll carry you up the stairs in a suplex position," and such. He was great in it. Starks was great in it. It was great. Did exactly what it needed to do.
Now, you mentioned that the ladder match was the only match that disappointed you. Was that because of the use of the surprise of Ethan Page?
No.
Or the injury angle that they did with Cody Rhodes?
No. It was because it was 6 guys who aren't ladder match guys.
So you needed more flips?
I don't know if I needed like a ton of flips, but it was just a bunch of like big guys doing like, it was too slow. It did not click other than Pentagon and Lance Archer. I thought they were really good.
Okay.
And then Cody was barely even in it. He was selling the injury most of the time.
Right.
And I can't tell you a single thing Ethan Page did. I can't tell you a single thing Scorpio Sky did other than going through a ladder and winning. I can't tell, like I had forgotten Max Caster was even in the match until now, although he did a great rap before it. And I believe I'm forgetting another person who was in this match.
You said Pentagon already, so I thought that
Pentagon,
was
Caster, Archer, Cody, Ethan Page,
Scorpio Sky.
There you go. All right, I got him.
Okay. Now, what are you thinking for the future of Ethan Page now that All Ego has transitioned from not just, well, forget the Karate Man stuff from Impact, but now that he's in AEW, what is his future? Is he going to be a singles guy in a mid card? Is he going to be a TNT championship contender? Is he going to end up in a tag team despite the fact that Josh Alexander is still back in Impact?
He's not going to end up in a tag team. I think eventually Alexander will find his way over here, whether through the relationship Impact and AEW have or if he signs outright. So they're not going to do that. I expect he will be a singles guy. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to feud with Darby soon. They had a feud in Evolve years ago that was highly acclaimed. I think they will revisit that. I think he's going to do really well. I mean, as an in-ring worker, he's not the greatest ever, but there's plenty of guys in this company who are great. So he'll have great matches just hanging around them. And he's
very solid in the ring.
You
don't want to make it. He's not Jinder Mahal. You don't want to try to say something like that. But he's very average, I guess would be the way to put it. And in an AEW roster, it's still pretty impressive overall.
He's the rich man Sean Spears, and really rich man Sean Spears,
but can work the mic much better than Sean.
He's one of the best promos in the business. That's his strength right there. So for that alone, he's gonna find a place there the same way Ricky Starks did. You know.
Speaking of great mic workers, we had the debut of Christian Cage show up on Revolution. He's an all-time great talent. I don't know if it's exactly Hall of Fame worthy the way that it was promoted, but it was still a pretty good signing, considering that with the schedule that someone's going to have in AEW, I think that's going to be pretty good for what he can probably do, because I wouldn't expect him to work a Raw schedule if he was still in WWE working a weekly show. That would be too much, but with the way they tape, with the way that they space out their talent very well in AEW, a show, once every 4 or 5 weeks have a match and then a pay-per-view every couple of months.
Right.
That will work pretty well for Christian at no matter how bad his body might end up from recovering from his injuries.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot to this one as well, because obviously we had already done the show when Big Show appeared and teased that announcement, and that took a life of its own right there. And, some of that I think is on AEW. They didn't really try to stop it. I think also if you're anyone who knew better, you knew that it wasn't going to be The Rock or John Cena or Brock Lesnar, who were all names that were brought up. You knew it likely wasn't going to be Dave Bautista. And I mean, CM Punk was a popular name there, but I think you and I both agree here. If you're bringing CM Punk in, you're not going to telegraph that shit.
No, you would announce it. You would get the buzz going as soon as possible. Especially if it was that big of a name. So that was my thinking when I was discussing it with some other friends online when it came to who this person would be, and they were naming off all these people that you just listed. I said they wouldn't do that for a name that big. The little tease that was given by Big Show Paul White on the show, and then having TK make a press release type announcement afterwards. It was going to be a big name. I think of the other names that were mentioned, I thought Kurt Angle, I don't think it would have been a wise choice, but it seemed like, okay, that would have fit the description and what they've teased. Christian, once I heard that rumor, made the most sense, so I wasn't surprised when I heard that's what it was.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, is it as good as it could have been if it was Punk or one of those other guys? No. Is it the next best thing? Absolutely. I cannot tell you how annoyed I would have been if it would have been like Angle or Rob Van Dam or somebody like that. Rob Van Dam hasn't been newsworthy in a decade or so now.
Yeah.
He's been the same guy even longer than that. What are he and Jerry Lynn going to do another match 20 years later?
The only thing of his that's been worth talking about was the run in Impact as a heel was pretty interesting. His whole Katie Forbes tie-in, it wasn't good. I don't want to say it was great monumental stuff, but it was better than expected. and then he got in the ring, and it just devalued everything you got excited for.
Right. And Angle is, I mean, like, I think you and I will both agree, he's done.
Yeah,
he was done in WWE. He's not going to suddenly be good here now. I think the big thing.
It's too bad, because Angle used to be great and dependable on the mic. He had some roles as not a manager, but he was leading the stable. He did some general manager roles, and he was very good in that. And then we saw what he did in WWE upon his retirement and that Hall of Fame run, and he was terrible on the mic. He just doesn't have it anymore. Christian, on the other hand, I have a feeling he's going to deliver on the mic, just like an Ethan Page. And just imagine him crossing paths with a John Moxley or an Eddie Kingston and other great mic workers. MJF was the first name I got excited for.
Well, I mean, like, see, I think part of the thing here is it's where he showed up, which is why some people are trying to downplay this. It was barely a month ago he returned to the Royal Rumble, and everybody was excited. There were, for weeks, people were talking about, oh, I want to see Christian against this guy. I want to see Christian against Big E. I want to see Christian and Edge teaming up again. And then he goes to AEW and suddenly, oh, he's old, he's washed up, I don't want to see him. This isn't a big deal. It's like the reverse of the Rumble thing, because the AEW diehards, when he showed up, then said the same thing. And now they flipped their tune, and now the WWE people have flipped their tune.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on that part, but I will say the big difference between what you just discussed is with the names that were rumored for and argued for opponents for Christian WWE were all mid-card. Whereas now he's going to come to AEW, and he's not going to be taking on Kip Sabian in a long-term feud. He's going to be at the top of the card. So
he may be beating the Kipper in a 2-minute match, which I'll enjoy.
For sure. And I totally get why they do that. But at the same time, I think that's what sets up the expectation. So yeah, it'd be okay if he went to WWE, and I'm just defending almost like devil's advocate here, because I didn't have an opinion one way or the other. But if he would have gone to WWE, he would not have been main eventing WrestleMania or Fast Lane. He might have been teaming with Edge against Jey Uso and Roman Reigns, because that kind of makes sense according to the stories we've seen. But that would have been the highest he would have been on whatever run he would have had. Whereas in AEW, he's probably going to cross paths with everyone we just mentioned, potentially taking on Kenny Omega down the line.
He brought that up today, talking with Renee Paquette. I mean, look, Christian is not an idiot. He knows what the rest of us know. It's not a secret that Vince has never really been high on the guy. That's been a rumor since you and I were in our 20s, for crying out loud.
Oh, well, we remember when he left for TNA at that time, 2005. He wasn't in a main event run, but he was teasing stuff with Jericho and John Cena. That was his last big.
They had a triple threat match that was really good.
It was very good. I think the criticism that I understand from Vince is that he doesn't come off as a star. He's very good at everything. He's not the best at anything, and he doesn't really draw in a lot of attention. Give him the mic, and he'll make things work, but he's not captivating the way that you could describe Eddie Kingston. He'll bring out emotions out of you. That's a bit different. Christian's very good at talking up and being funny and talking people down, but he hasn't really had, and this could be because he hasn't had the material to do this, but he's never had to absorb people, get emotionally involved in anything he does other than being a heel, where you just wanted him to lose his one more match.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, like the big misnomer with Christian, because he did go to TNA and such. And by the way, he has the same music he had in TNA. They did a remix of that. That theme is great. He's always had great themes, except for the remix of Close Your Eyes. They should have just done the original when he returned. That's besides the point.
Fair enough.
Quick tangent there. People they're like, oh, they lump him in with like the Nashes and the Angles and the Stings and the Steiners and the Booker T's, who were pushed hard when they went to TNA and didn't really have an impact, pun intended there.
Right.
Christian was great in TNA.
Yeah.
He was great there. His run there was fantastic as a face, as a heel, for the entire 3-year run he was there. That was not a bad signing by them.
Not at all.
He was great.
But it wasn't a game changer. which is what I think a lot of people are going to say, is they felt like whoever this person was signing with AEW was going to change the game. Christian's a very good name. You can insert him in any feud with anyone, face or heel. He's going to deliver, but I don't think you're going to raise ratings or buy Christian.
No, we all agree there, but short of it being Punk, nobody they brought in was going to do that. That was an unrealistic. I mean, I guess maybe if Batista had come in,
Batista, Brock, and the Cena's, all the names that were impossible could have done it. But of the multiple reigns, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, but like short of those people, that wasn't going to happen right there. So, I mean, honestly, this is the next best thing. I mean, and I think if they hadn't even teased the announcement and he had just shown up, it would have been even bigger. Now, that may have been the flaw there. They might have been better off keeping it secret, and then he just appears on the pay-per-view, because he was just in the Rumble a month ago and people thought he was coming back to WWE. So this looks like they stole him.
In a way.
Yeah. So this is a big deal. It's not as big a deal as it could have been with another name, but it is a big deal. He's still relatively young at 47. We've seen Edge. Edge is still great at that age. There's no reason to believe Christian, I think, I would argue, is a better worker than Edge.
I would say so. Might not be the big match worker, but you put, bell to bell. Yeah, for sure.
They're both, the odd thing is they're both stars, and they're both kind of underrated in a way, because they're both really, I think Edge is a really good talker. I think he's a really good worker. And I think Christian is the same, honestly.
Despite the fact that I'm Canadian, I've always felt Edge to be very overrated in all departments. He was great as the rated R superstar with that gimmick and his heel stuff. Anything outside of that, it's okay.
He's not a great draw. That's the one thing I can say about Edge. But I always enjoyed him.
Yeah, but you could say not a great draw about so many legends. I would say the same thing about Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. And there was another name just off the top of my head, and I'm already forgetting. Unfortunately, I'll come back.
But some people have said that about Sting at times too.
I won't comment on that, only because I didn't know WCW enough to say whether he was a draw. But from the outside looking in, I could see where that argument could be. Oh, it's the obvious name, Triple H. That's another one that is at the top, but is not a draw.
No, he was not a draw. He was not a draw at all.
But belonged in the role he had, just shouldn't have been the John Cena or the Austin or the top guy.
He was and you could say that about Edge too. They were the guys that worked with the draws.
And that's where I think Christian would do his best work in AEW. I wouldn't put the title on him, but have him go against Omega at the next pay-per-view before man gets a shot.
Let me address that here too, because then a lot of people seem to think that AEW is signing all these guys and they're going to win all these titles, and that it's just crawling with all these WWE people at the top of the card. Let me give you the champions: Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Darby Allin, Hikaru Shida.
Yeah.
I believe their combined WWE experience is 0. Am I mistaken there?
Depends if you want to count Kenny Omega's developmental time as WWE, but other than that, you're absolutely
or the time Paul White chokeslammed one of the Young Bucks through a table in a dark match.
I'm not even going to count that. No, you're absolutely correct, and they've done a good job promoting their own stars. I don't think that's really a relevant argument. I know online fans love to say it is, but in the end, what AEW does really well is make their stars matter. Whether it's their own or WWE guys, everyone matters to the appropriate amount. I don't give a crap about Kenny Omega, but I also am not part of the demographic that AEW is going for. And the demographic that likes AEW loves Kenny Omega.
They do,
Overrated piece of shit. But anyways, so Dynamite then. Leading into what's going into Dynamite, you were saying earlier that you thought it was a great card. I don't want to say I dispute that, but it didn't feel like it matches up with NXT's. But quickly, we have Christian Cage. He's going to get some time on the mic. Do you have any expectation about what he might be doing?
I have no idea what he'll be doing. I presume they'll set something up, but I can't really think of
who his first feud will be.
Yeah, I can't really think of what. Maybe it'll be Team Taz again. Cage seems to have a thing where he likes to powerbomb the veterans that come in, like he did.
Brian Cage. Gotcha.
Yeah, Brian Cage. And then, you can do the thing. Hey, my name's Cage. Your name is Cage. There can only be one Cage.
Yeah, they're not Highlanders, so we don't have to worry about that. So another match leading into the tag team that I am not a fan of. Matt Jackson's going to take on Phoenix. Definitely not my type of match, but for fans of that style, no doubt two of the best performers.
Yes, that's going to set up because Pac and Phoenix won the tag battle royal,
Exactly.
which you would have liked that match because I know you like a good battle royal. That was a good battle royal. So yes, they're going to do Phoenix and Matt Jackson to set up that match, which is eventually going to happen and is going to be a big hit with the AEW demographic.
Oh, for sure.
Say yes.
I don't know if I care as much about Pac as I would have for Penta El Zero, or I know I'm pronouncing it wrong, but Pentagon, whatever he's now known as, I think he's just always been my favorite since I've been introduced to the Lucha Underground and all that style. Another match, we talked about the women earlier, so the three that attacked Hikaru Shida are teaming up for a 6-woman tag, almost said 6-man, but Britt Baker, Maki Ito, and Nyla Rose going to take on Shida with her partners of Thunder Rosa, which I'm excited for, and Ryo Mizunami, who you've been promoting quite a bit because she is the one who ended up winning the tournament.
Yes, and her and Shida had an unbelievable match at this pay-per-view. I thought it was, considering how bad the explosion went, I would say the two best things on that show were the Sting match and the women's match.
Really?
And then the Kenny match by itself would be third.
Fair enough. Okay, that's what I was expecting you to say is number one, but understood.
Right.
And then they have another match that's booked, the TNT title, because of the winner of the ladder match, Scorpio Sky, is going to take on Darby Allin. I expect that to be a pretty solid match for that type of style.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for Scorp. I mean, he's had these opportunities before. He had the title match with Jericho. He had the title match with Cody. I wish he had done better in both of those opportunities. They weren't bad matches, but they should have been better. And this is now another opportunity. I think he's going to be going heel. This will be another opportunity for him to prove himself here. And you know, Darby, he's going to try to land on his head at some point in this match.
Probably. Yeah, not my thing, but he definitely, there's no doubt that the charisma and he's a draw. Might not be a Hulk Hogan type draw, but if my 16-year-old nephew turned on AEW and saw Darby Allin, he'd stay tuned in for a Darby Allin show.
They've got a lot of these budding draws and solid draws, AEW. They need to find the draw still, which I think is what they're hoping Hangman will turn into when he beats Omega, and that may end up happening, or unless they can just bring Shaq back every week.
That'd be interesting.
That was, I have to say, that was so much better than it had any right to be, that match.
Yeah.
So much better than it had any right to be.
Now, one last thing that's been set up for Dynamite was the Inner Circle War Council. What do you think is going to be happening with everyone involved in the Inner Circle?
You remember those times when the Horsemen kicked a guy out and they beat the guy down? Jericho's going to get beat down and kicked out.
So do you think he's turning face, or do you think he's going to move into an off-camera or announcer role more full-time or something?
I think he's going to turn face.
Okay.
I don't think he's done yet. I think this is going to set up, he's going to be against these guys, and then in a week or two, in on the white horse rides Sammy Guevara to help Jericho out, and they take on the MJF's Inner Circle. It's overdue for Jericho to be kicked out here. So
I've heard it's worn out his welcome. It wore out my welcome hearing him on commentary. There's the potential. I could see what people like about it, but it was just way too much for me.
Well, I enjoyed him on commentary.
Well, we have different preferences in what we enjoy from wrestling. So
that's true.
I think I would enjoy Paul White's style as long as he doesn't go overdo it into the character work, whereas that's what Jericho did.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out because that's next Monday. We'll be talking about how he did on next week's show.
I'm pretty interested to see how that's going to go. Now, want to switch gears from, is there any last things you want to discuss about AEW in general?
The only thing I will say, one more thing in regards to the exploding death match thing. They can't ever do this match again unless they do it on the taped show for next week. They tape it on Thursday to make it right. They do a tag match with Moxley and Kingston versus Kenny and whoever you want to put as Kenny's partner. And then they get the explosive explosion right, which they can do via, post-production and just getting the explosion actually right. If they do that, they can salvage this thing. The match, I mean. If they don't do it, you can't do the match ever again.
No, don't. I think that's the better way to go.
Yeah.
So before we get to some WWE stuff, I wanted to switch gears to Impact because real quickly, they've got a pay-per-view coming up this weekend, Sacrifice, and it's one of those Impact Plus shows. It's almost like their version of the Saturday night's main event where, yes, it's a big show, but it's not their pay-per-view. But at the same time, this has got to be one of their biggest main events they could have within the Impact roster. Without
yes.
So they have a champion versus champion match. Moose has been holding the TNA title for almost a year at this point. He's been claiming to be a world champion. It's never been acknowledged by Impact. And then a couple of weeks back, Scott D'Amore said, "No, it's official. You are now a world champion. I'm acknowledging that title within Impact, and you will." And he defended it that show. He won, and now he's going to be challenging Rich Swann in a title for title match. I'm pretty excited for that. Usually these Impact Plus shows, it's I'll watch it the next day. I'll catch it on Fight TV here in Canada. I have a feeling I'll watch this one live.
Yeah, that is an interesting match right there because you have to imagine the winner is going to be defending that title against Kenny Omega at Rebellion, right? That's the April.
That's the next one.
April pay-per-view. You have to imagine that's the next match, and I could see an argument for either or here.
I'm going to lean towards Rich Swann only because heel versus heel doesn't make much sense.
I'm going to lean towards Rich Swann because you would think that Moose would be a contender to take the title from Omega.
Agreed.
Eventually, more than Omega taking it from him. I don't think it would be Moose who would beat Omega. I think you would be better served to go with one of the young guys they have, like an Ace Austin or a Chris Bay or our good pal Willie Mack, who we both like.
Josh
Alexander, I suppose. Trey Miguel is back.
Yeah, he's been a big name, but not my style, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously. But this is about making a young guy, and he is a young guy. So.
And they're really pushing him on Weekly Impact. It's still one of my favorite shows, and they've really been making a big deal out of him. He's been feuding with Sami Callihan recently.
Right. Well, yeah, you always got to put somebody with Sami. In that regard,
he delivers in that realm.
Yep, he's like the gatekeeper guy.
Yeah,
or something
and that's probably the best role possible for that annoying twat.
Yeah.
So, from what you were just saying, then, do you expect Kenny Omega to be involved in the finish of this main event to protect whoever does lose?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you need that. I would just play this one straight. And whoever wins, and then you set up the. Maybe Kenny appears after the match or something, or you at least announce that that's going to be the next match. I think you want to build that one up as hard as you possibly can. And
that is in fact the goal. If that's what they're going to be doing at Rebellion, I would agree with that. I think you should protect Moose in the loss only because he's been so strong over the last year. He's been very well promoted. I don't know if he's undefeated, but he's been very well protected, so a clean loss to Swann would really derail that momentum he has.
Sure, but at the same time, Swann got pinned by Omega at the last pay-per-view, and if you're going to go with him, and again, I think you should go with him because Moose winning and then losing it a month from now,
terrible.
does not sound like a good idea to me. So I think you have Moose. He looks dominant in this. It's a back-and-forth thing, but he looks dominant, and then Swann squeaks it out with like a
roll-up type thing?
Yeah, with like a sort of flukish thing that protects Moose, but it still gives Swann an impressive victory.
I could agree with that. Just to run down the rest of the card, nothing too major, but you just mentioned Ace Austin. He's going to get a title shot in the X Division title against one of my favorites, TJP. We've got the tag team champions. You mentioned the Good Brothers were at Revolution. They're going to defend their titles against Finjuice. So really tying in all that Forbidden Door jumbo. But we have New Japan sending...
I believe that match has already been taped because... Finley and Robinson are back in Japan for the New Japan Cup.
I have a feeling a lot of these Impact shows are already taped.
All right.
Speaking of tag titles, the Knockouts, their version of the women's division, the Knockouts Tag Team Championships, Fire and Flava will defend against one of my favorites, Jordan Grace and Jazz. It's been an interesting team.
Ooh, Jazz.
Yeah. And
He's
then
running to school with Thunder Rosa now. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, they're running to school, I believe,
good.
in Texas or something.
And then somewhat related to the Knockouts tag division, Havoc and Nevaeh are taking on Tennille Dashwood and Caleb with a K.
Oh God, Conley!
Yeah, that's going to be a sports entertainment match if I've ever seen.
Oh my God! I hope Statlander gave him some pointers.
At least this is happening this Saturday. I'm excited for it because that title match is very interesting. I think they've really done a great job with Moose. I'm not all in on Rich Swann as the champion of any brand. I like the guy. He feels like a mid-carder to me. Almost, unfortunately, I want to compare to Kofi Kingston, where it feels good. I'm excited that they're champion. I really enjoy it, but it doesn't feel big enough. And that's why I'm wondering when Moose is going to take the title from him.
Well, part of the problem there is that we can't really gauge how successful it's been because there is no crowds there. Unlike AEW and WWE, they have either crowds or the Thunderdome. You can at least gauge something from that. And also, he was kind of pushed to the side for a while when they started the AEW Impact thing and they were focusing so much on Omega appearing on those shows. So I think he's been hurt a little bit by that. So it's hard to say how it would have gone if it was a perfect scenario where we had crowds and he was defending the title in high profile matches and such.
Fair enough. It's a fair point. It hasn't felt right to me, but I can see what you're talking about. Absolutely.
I mean, he defended the title against Tommy Dreamer.
And that was a surprisingly good match and a great story. I know we talked about that previously, but I really enjoyed that.
It's still Tommy Dreamer in 2021.
Yeah. I have a feeling he, very much like I insinuated with Jericho, he's taken this loss and moving into a backstage role more than an on-screen one. But we'll see. Now I want to switch gears to the promotions I've been watching. The main one being, well, I've been watching Impact, but obviously WWE is the main promotion. Even though Revolution was the biggest news over the last week, WWE is the road to WrestleMania right now. So there's a lot of things going on there.
That's the new show to look out for with Revolution now in the past.
Absolutely. So they've got Fast Lane coming up. They did develop a bit of the story for that on Raw quickly. I don't want to do a quick review, but I showed you something because you don't watch Raw, but I put on the screen to show you the new entrance for Bobby Lashley. And I forgot to mention to you, the other thing that was kind of interesting about that is when he was in the ring to take on The Miz, they have the pumped in Thunderdome crowd noise. He got a pop. They were really feeding him babyface noise. And that, I don't know if I want to say it's caught me by surprise, but at the same time, if the goal is to eventually do Drew McIntyre against Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania, that's changing the dynamic quite a bit in a route that I wouldn't have expected WWE to take. Yeah,
I mean, maybe it isn't the plan, but what is the plan if that's not it?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think the exciting thing, and I feel like I mentioned this previously, so I don't want to mention it too often again, but with the 2 nights of WrestleMania, I wouldn't be surprised if they use that to have 2 matches or to spread things out in a different way. It leaves a lot of unpredictability, which is pretty rare for WWE to have around the road to WrestleMania, because usually we know the exact plan and we can see it coming a mile away. And it's not that it's bad, but it's just, well, we know what's going to happen, so let's just get to it. Whereas now they have a lot of moving parts. There's the possibility of Sheamus being involved. I don't expect it to happen, but it's still possible. There's rumors of Brock. Again, I don't expect it.
I think that's the only thing you could do, really.
Other than Drew and...
I think unless they got Brock, I mean, Drew and Lashley has to be the only thing. But, I mean, I will say, I keep track of the ratings more than you have. Now, obviously, some of this is a little flukish because we've had 2 world title matches in the span of 2 weeks. That's always going to inflate the rating. But the rating was up for the beginning of Raw when Lashley first appeared this week. So perhaps there is something to that there with him. But I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. It's a tough one right there. I in some ways, yeah, it would be a shame for him to lose this title and such right after he won it. But then again, I don't know what else they could be going with.
It's a really bizarre thing. I think we're getting too involved from that SMARC mindset. But right now, all signs point to Drew McIntyre having his crowning moment in front of a live audience at WrestleMania, something he was deprived of last year at the last minute due to the pandemic.
But you know, now you have to worry, because if Lashley is getting over, what if this crowning moment now turns into people booing Drew?
I don't think that's so much of a concern, but I do believe that there's so much momentum that it's more like they would boo it after it happens. Almost like what would happen with Daniel Bryan the year that he lost the title in record time to Sheamus, and they just booed Sheamus after that. Sheamus was very over. He was doing well as a babyface, but that win deflated every piece of momentum they had. Killed him. And obviously gave us the yes movement. So it worked out in the end for Daniel Bryan.
Right.
Sheamus did fine, but it wasn't what we
I think only for Daniel Bryan was the only one who came out of that better.
Yeah, that was a weird one. But when it comes back to what's happening right now, I think if Drew has his win, I think the crowd's going to react positively to that live. But if they were to keep doing any live shows, because there was rumors they're going to do live events again soon, we'll see about that. I don't think Drew would keep that momentum, because there's so much interest in what Bobby Lashley is doing right now.
In the group itself, we've talked about this for months. Now, the Hurt Business has been pretty much the only thing consistently on Raw that you could say, that's not terrible. It's pretty good.
Honestly, you could say that about Sheamus and Drew as well, but definitely the highlight has been
the matches between Drew and Sheamus. The build has not always been great. They did the turn too quickly there.
Oh, it's been I would say the worst is it's average at best. Average at worst. But in all honesty, the Hurt Business has been consistent for a longer period of time.
Yes.
And I think the big difference here is with WWE, because of that they make everyone seem like a very silly character more often than I feel they should. The Hurt Business has not been silly whatsoever. They've had some tension between the tag champions, but at the same time, they've been dominant.
They've cooled that too, haven't they?
Well, it kind of comes and goes. Something that they've been doing quite a bit with a few other teams, because they had a record amount of tag teams break up last year, as we covered.
Here's the thing, and obviously, look, we all know WWE is micromanaged and stuff, but there are some people that are able to slip through that and make sure that their vision is seen. Mm-hmm. Like I mean, obviously we don't know MVP personally, but I mean, I know his demeanor and such. He ain't gonna allow shit to go off the rails right there. And he's the one that's, he may not be the one carrying that in the ring, but behind the scenes and on the microphone, he's the one in charge there. And he's not gonna allow that thing to be anything but consistent, which is why I think it has worked out so well. That and the fact that they have protected Lashley. And when you do protect someone and book them well for months and months on end, and then they finally have a big moment, it's gonna work.
Oh, for sure. They've done a great job. And it almost came out of left field, because we were talking about, maybe we'll say a month and a half ago, WrestleMania on Raw, it doesn't seem all that interesting because we've already seen every potential matchup, or it's gonna be Sheamus, who just doesn't feel like WrestleMania main event. And then they did this with Lashley, and it feels, wow. We went from Drew getting his number one, obviously the top of the card moment, to maybe it should be Lashley who gets that moment, because he's just on such a roll. I find it fascinating, but again, I'm the WWE guy in this duo.
And of course, now the danger is that maybe he should get this moment, and what generally happens with WWE, it goes the other way.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, where is Rhea Ripley?
Well, she's still getting her promos every week on Raw. I think, I'm guessing here, but I have a feeling that tooth that was lost by Asuka really had to change maybe by a week or two what they're going to be doing here. They had Charlotte show up on Raw to confront Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. Very tense moment.
What a segment that sounds like.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But I have a feeling they're going to lead into something after Fast Lane, or maybe just before, because there's 1 week left of Raw before Fast Lane, I believe.
Hasn't Charlotte said she wants to wrestle Asuka at WrestleMania? WrestleMania, though?
She said she wants to go for the title. I don't know if she said Asuka in particular, but either way, those three women, Asuka, Charlotte, Rhea Ripley, those are your components of whatever the WrestleMania Raw Women's title match is going to be. Is it going to be a triple threat? Is it going to be a one-on-one match? We don't know yet.
I'm just going to caution you right now. I don't know if that's going to be the case right there. I think it's more likely it's going to just be Charlotte and Asuka. I told you this when they started playing the Rhea vignettes before. I think that's going to be a situation like they did with Rusev all those years ago, where they play that for months, and then after Mania, she shows up.
It's entirely possible. Yeah. I don't see it going that way, but at the same time, I'm not as, this is what's going to happen, Luke Harper excitement that I was 4 years ago, whatever it was.
You got your guard up.
Well, it's not so much the guard up. It's just I'm waiting for things to happen. I'm not predicting right now, and they haven't set up anything to say that's what's going to happen. We're just getting teases that Rhea's going to be on Raw at some point. It makes sense that she's going to go after Charlotte, but they haven't told any story to connect those two things together.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of the women, unfortunately, they're still pushing Nia Jax. She's going to end up having a match at Fast Lane. They're defending the titles. Shayna, I'm still enjoying, but I don't like her in this team, against Bianca and Sasha. So
we don't just do that.
Maybe it was non-title, or I think it was a singles match. It was Bianca against Shayna, and Bianca.
I thought they did that at the pay-per-view. What was at the Chamber?
Maybe. I thought no, it was. I think it was another duo. I can't recall.
We'll look it up after the show.
No matter what, it's obviously it was forgettable. So whatever the case was,
that's true.
They're doing that at Fast Lane. I have a feeling we're going to see something with Lashley. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a title defense. I have a feeling they're going to be going with Drew against Sheamus for a #1 contender spot at WrestleMania. Judging by how that no DQ ending with not a DQ, but both men out.
A no contest.
No contest. Very bizarre.
Vince was like, I can't let that explosion thing be the worst thing. I gotta top him.
Yeah, you didn't quite reach it, Vince. But
you failed.
You tried, but yeah, A for effort.
Hey, get him the Bart Simpson cake. At least you tried, man.
To be honest, out of all the things that was pretty lame on Raw, that was not the worst. We'll talk about that.
No, I've heard. Let's get into it now. Braun and Shane.
Yeah, that was brutal. I was trying to figure out, because we were having a discussion elsewhere about scripted promos and letting them have some real talk, and I have a feeling Shane was given bullet points, and he's just terrible on the mic. He's comfortable. He doesn't ever sound scripted, but he obviously forgot his lines. That's what I got out of it, and it turned into such a mess of a program. I don't dislike the idea overall. It's not what I would do with Lashley. Braun Strowman.
Yeah, we certainly wouldn't do it with Lashley.
No. But at the same time, I get what they're trying to do. It's tough. I feel like I'm defending Shane being involved in matchups at WrestleMania, because I don't think they should be doing that.
No.
But at least I understand what they're trying to do is to give a big win to whoever does beat them up. And unfortunately, like, let's say they had AJ Styles take on Braun at WrestleMania. I don't think it would be as memorable if Braun just squashes AJ. Plus, it damages AJ in a way that we don't care if it happens to Shane. So I don't like the program. It's starting off terribly. The segment was horrible. I don't know what the heck was going on there. And it was easily the worst thing I'd seen on Raw in a week.
That's good right there. Yeah. Look, I would even argue at this point that beating Shane doesn't really mean squat either. Like, we are eons past the point. Like, when he came back in 2016 and everybody was like, this is the biggest return ever. Him and Undertaker is going to be great. And it lasted all about 3 weeks before people were sick of Shane and realized that that was not a good thing to have him back. And he's been diminishing returns ever since. I mean, he had the good match with AJ. That was actually a pretty good match at WrestleMania.
No. AJ had a good match. Shane was just part of it.
He did a shooting star, though.
Did he?
I remember I went over to my friend's house. He was like, I got to show you matches from WrestleMania. So I watched that one because I wanted to see if it was actually good, to see what AJ did with them. I wanted to see how bad Taker Reigns was, and I had to see the Wyatt Orton match. Which, by the way,
Yeah, that's still going on. I I don't know if I said it last week, but I really want WWE Films to produce another horror movie. I don't care if it's See No Evil 74. I want them to do a female horror movie and put Alexa in that role because she's amazing in this role. But she's the only thing that's amazing. And she's just going to be I don't want to say side piece in that kind of way, but she's just a side story. She's not going to be involved in any part of the match at the end. It's going to be to Orton and nobody's going to care. Well, I shouldn't say that.
You're not impressed with Orton doing the Ultimate Warrior vomiting gimmick?
No, I am not. He does it better than the Warrior did, but at the same time, Orton does most things better than the Warrior did.
So someday somebody, and it's gonna be me, is gonna do an oral history on this Orton Wyatt feud because it's beautiful. It's unintentional comedy gold just waiting to happen.
It wouldn't be so bad if they had some more of these elements in some of the other programs. Like, let's compare it to Impact quickly. They do a lot of these weirdo things like the Broken Universe at the time. And then they still do these segments right now where they did the Wrestle House. And right now they're doing a specific one with Johnny Swinger's Casino.
Oh, that's got to be great.
It's amazing. It's not as good as Wrestle House, but it's still very good because Swinger's a great character.
Yes.
And they create this side universe where, yes, they could be silly, but at least when they get in the ring, it's not silly anymore.
Right.
What they're doing here is they're involving it all in this one angle. Nothing else is silly to that point where there's, possessions and double characters and a bunch of other stuff. And it's just so jarring from the rest of the show. It's too bad because there's a lot of things that can be good about it, but it's just bad overall.
When you do this sort of stuff, like Matt Hardy and the Boneyard match and the Sting match, they all have the right idea here because they don't take themselves entirely too seriously. That was what was brilliant about the Matt thing. It was almost a parody of wrestling.
Right.
It was lovingly mocking, the pro wrestling tropes. And the Boneyard match did that. I mean, that thing was so over the top. And that's part of the reason why people liked it. And the Sting Darby thing was also in its own way over the top.
Okay.
And such compared to everything else. And that's why they worked. So you either have to go all the way over the top and be winking at the audience and be in on the joke. And the problem with this braid thing is they take it so seriously. And that's where it all falls apart right there. Besides the fact, too, that Bray, as it always happens with him, they do something that just kills him, and then they never recover from it, and then he does this sort of thing, and people are just like, just go away. And then he goes away, and he'll come up with something new, and people will be excited about it, and then they'll do him and Seth Rollins in Hell in a Cell again, and they'll stop being excited again.
I think where they're going with this one is unfortunately another WrestleMania rematch between the two. I hope they're not just trying to rebuild from that one, recover, because there's no recovering from how bad that match was from a few years
back.
The
worms are coming back. Coming back.
Don't do this to me. So I don't know where it's going. And unfortunately, I wanted to quickly talk about the matches that took place on Raw, and that ties into this. So we had Lashley defending his title against The Miz in a rematch that I found out about 10 minutes before Raw went on the air. I kind of avoided the internet on Monday. I had a busy work day, and then I find out that's one of the matches booked.
That was unnecessary right there.
Well, I wouldn't say it was unnecessary because they want to get Lashley and promote him. That entrance that I showed you, he needed to have a match to follow that, and he looked really good against The Miz. He dominated him again. It was a little closer, but it wasn't because The Miz was suddenly competitive. It was just he snuck around a little bit more. He didn't get caught.
Right.
It was pretty interesting. But the point I'm trying to make is hours' notice for this huge title match on Raw. And then within the hour, they started the Drew Sheamus match, which, again, top of the card, main event talent. I don't think I heard about until Raw started. And then I find out it's got a gimmick of no DQ. Yeah. And then
which they didn't even pay off, by the way.
Well, I think it's because they're leading towards a last man standing match, hence the fact that they were both out on their backs.
Here's the problem is when you do a stipulation match like no DQ and then it ends in a no contest, you tell your audience right there, even though I'm sure there will be a winner in a last man standing match. Well, how can I believe that you're actually going to do that? You just did a no DQ, and then it ended in a no contest in a match where it shouldn't end like that.
I don't think fans think about it that deep. I think online fans do, but I think most fans see it as, wow, these guys are so even. I can't wait to see them go against each other again and see who actually gets out on top.
That's what they're banking on right
well,
there.
And I think more fans think of it that way than the way you do. But again, there's no evidence of this. It's just my
right.
But coming back to what I was saying is 2 matches booked last minute that were kind of fresh. Either of those matches would have been great main events had you announced it a week in advance, a no DQ match between those 2 top draws, a rematch for the WWE title against The Miz, despite the fact that it's The Miz. It still would have been a draw for the main event. What they ended up going with was a random last-minute booked within the show AJ versus Orton match, which is a WrestleMania quality match according to the commentators. Which we knew because it was a WrestleMania match. What was it, 2 years ago or something?
Do you remember? People were so excited about the possibility of that match, and now that match means shit.
Nothing. Yeah, they beat it into the ground.
Yeah.
This is again where AEW does something tremendous: is they don't have these guys wrestling on such a constant basis. They do break it up these days, but it's still against the same people. Orton didn't have to go against AJ. He could have been against Ricochet. Someone, I'm not saying it had to be, but in the end, he lost by distraction because of Alexa's interference with the black gook or whatever it is. Gunk, I should have said. Sorry about that.
You have to feel for Randy Orton. I mean, like, this time last year, for a while last year, he was having what a lot of people thought was the best run of his career. It was expected he was going to win the title. Yep. He was going to wrestle Edge. And somehow none of that happened.
Well, he won the title for 3 weeks.
Yeah, he won the title for 3 weeks so they could pop a rating when Drew won it back. And the Edge thing didn't happen. And now he is stuck in this Bray Wyatt shithole yet again.
Maybe he enjoys it. I don't know.
I can't imagine knowing how he is.
He could be enjoying having a different approach to the segments. He probably enjoyed all those not the Firefly Funhouse, but what Bray Wyatt had previously, because they went to his Chamber of Horrors or whatever. Orton seems to get involved in a lot of these extra things, so maybe he enjoys having that. I really don't know. In terms of what's delivered on TV, I don't know a single fan that's enjoying it.
Yeah, I don't know a single fan that's enjoying it either. It's bombed.
Bombed is a good way to put it.
It has bombed. Well, actually, no, it's been more explosive than the explosive barbed wire death match. I can say that.
That's true. That is true. So that pretty much covers what's going on with WrestleMania. We're building up to Fast Lane. There's a lot of potential. We don't know what's going on. The other thing that really annoyed me from Raw is they obviously announced that WrestleMania, the tickets are going to be on sale as of Tuesday of next week. Awesome, but they beat it into the ground with a slogan that was repeated about a dozen times. WrestleMania is back in business. Honestly, it's not a terrible slogan, but you hear it 16 times in a 3-hour show, and the false commentary excitement that just doesn't really feel genuine.
You'll remember this, and some of the viewers who know us will remember this. Do you remember when I was still watching WWE right after the network launched, and they had a Raw, I think it was the summer of 2014, where they pushed the $9.99 price, I believe, like 50 times in a 3-hour period, and I just lost it.
Well, wasn't that the year that they found the audio of Michael Cole telling Vince, "I've said it enough," or something like that, and then you can hear him, "Yes, sir, I'll do it again." Then he gets on the air and says
that might have been it. I don't know if it was that episode, but it probably
around that time.
I just was like, I went nuts on the forum we were on that night. Like, I think that might have been the beginning of the end for me in some regard. I was like, we get it. We get it. They got it the first 20 times. Now you're just overkilling it. But speaking of the network, you heard that the full archive isn't going to be on Peacock for like at least 5 months.
Yeah, by SummerSlam, they're or what it was is the archive is going to be there, but they're not going to have all the search options and the matches when you can go to just this third match of the card. You're going to actually have to fast forward to get to that. I don't know. Either way, it's not going to be complete, whatever the aspect is. It's not going to be much, but for people that really depend on that stuff, that is terrible.
Yeah, that's gonna be a blow right there.
I think some transition. I think anyone who assumed it was going to be 100% what the network was going over to Peacock, we're kind of expecting the impossible. The network is something they've been building up for, is it 5 or 6 years now? And suddenly just moving it from one system to the other, it's not just, well, let's plug it in here. There's going to be more to it.
I think the big concern here is that this Peacock thing, which, I do have and such on the free tier, not the tier that the network would be on. Yeah. I mean, it's not a good streaming service at all. No. Yeah, no, I compared to the Netflix and the Hulu and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus, all of which I technically have ESPN Plus, even though I've never used it. They're all better. All offer more. The searching and stuff just appears to be so much better. The accessibility is so much better. And like we talked about, there's some real concerns NBC Universal has about this thing, and they're not going to be patient about this. So I hope Vince gets all the money he's owed from this, because this could end up going bad. And I don't think this has anything to do with him. I think this is all Peacock. They don't have a clue what they're doing.
They're going to figure it all out. I know I was reading about Paramount Plus being another one added in. We have enough cable channels that it's replacing the cost of what cable was 10, 12 years ago. It's a little ridiculous from the outside looking in. I only have Netflix at this point and the WWE Network. I'll probably get Peacock, but I have everything from Canada using a VPN. I got the US access, and I got to figure out how that's going to work with Peacock, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to move on.
Yep.
The next show that's on tonight is NXT. So we quickly talked about how they have a pretty strong card against what Dynamite is putting on. They have 2 title matches, starting with the NXT Championship that I'm super excited for. I love Adam Cole. He's amazing balls. Fuck Adam Cole. I do enjoy Finn Balor, but that consistent, strong matchup that we've seen with Pete Dunne as well as Kyle O'Reilly, I'm expecting what I was complaining about with the Bucks earlier about all these matches having that formula. I'm expecting that formula to come into NXT.
You think it's bad now? Wait till you see who's agenting the match.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be that guy from that WrestleMania match.
Yeah, that's true.
Adam Cole is going to Canadian destroyer Finn Balor 5 times off the cage, the protective cage, and Finn Balor will kick out of all of them. The last one he'll kick out at 1.
I think it was Johnny Gargano where they did that on the outside. It was a destroyer to the outside, or the Panama Sunrise.
Johnny's got therapy. He won't be there.
Yeah, I know he won't be there, but I'm just recalling of the worst one was I think he did it to the outside, got him in the ring, and then Johnny kicked out at 2. Yeah. That said, the other title match that's booked that night tonight is pretty exciting. It's the Women's Championship, Io Shirai, so automatically it's going to be good. It's Toni Storm, who's pretty darn good as well. So I expect that to be the better of the 2.
They could put us against Io Shirai. She'd get 3.5 stars there.
She'd get 3.5 inches from me. That's all I could offer. I'm sorry, ladies. Kaden Carter, she's going to be taking on Xia Li. I'm trying to move on here. You can't leave it too long. They're going to have a match that's been building up for quite a bit. I love what they're doing with Xia Li and this mystical gimmick that they're giving her, and she's just looking like a destroyer. I'm hoping it's leading to something good, and unfortunately I like Kaden Carter as well, but she's just fodder. She's going to end up losing, and Xia Li is going to go on a rampage, and I'm hoping it turns out to be pretty good stuff. But the big thing most people are talking about is William Regal apparently has 2 blockbuster or what changed the landscape announcements, and we're not quite sure what it's going to be because there's 3 big rumored things, and it's basically going to be 2 of the 3. The 2-night takeover is a rumor, the women's tag team titles going to NXT getting their own, and then the big one that we've known about for a couple of weeks of the rumor to going to Tuesdays. So we'll see what ends up happening on.
I believe it's going to be. I believe my buddy from Sports Illustrated, Justin Barrasso, reported that it's going to be the tag titles, and that Takeover is going to be 2 nights. One on Wednesday, I forget which Wednesday it is, but the
Wednesday or something.
Yeah, the Wednesday before WrestleMania, and then that'll be on USA, and then the Thursday show will be on Peacock.
That's pretty interesting. I'm not. I like the 2-night aspect only because it really switches up what they could do. It gives them some storytelling options. I know we compared it to New Japan with their Wrestle Kingdom, and it was pretty interesting. I didn't get to watch it, but the idea of the 2 title defenses and then the eventual combining of the titles.
Yeah, it's some of that. It's also because they want to be able to go out saying we won on the last night we were on Wednesday.
Well, that's the AEW perspective. I just think it's going to be good storytelling, and that's all I care about. I don't care why they're doing it. I just want to enjoy it, and sounds like I'm going to enjoy this.
I mean, yeah, I guess it depends on what they do, right? I mean, what looks like the direction for the show? I would guess Cross and Finn Balor.
The big one. Cross is going to get a title shot. I hope it's against Finn Balor and not against Adam Cole. I have a feeling Adam Cole is going to lose and then end up taking on either a Kyle O'Reilly or maybe a Roderick Strong, since they're both kind of.
I would hope it's Roderick Strong. I think it's too soon to do the O'Reilly thing.
I would hope so. But it's also modern day.
Or they do a tag Fish if Bobby Fish, wherever he's hiding, I guess. They do him and Cole versus
O'Reilly and Strong, yeah.
Yeah, or Adam Cole sides with Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee comes back. There's been rumors about him in AEW now too. So
yeah, I heard.
I imagine those rumors only help McAfee to get a good money offer from somebody.
Wherever he ends up, yeah. What else is going on? Not too much with the tag division. There's a couple of teams that are feuding over the titles.
Those women's titles thing, I don't think it's a good idea.
I don't care either way, because I don't find it really deflates the value of the titles nearly as much as online fans do. But I think the issue is that it gives WWE this crutch to depend on, and it ends up having some lame stories because of it.
The right thing to do is just to bring the women's tag titles from the main roster and defend them there, like they did with last week, which is the reason this announcement is happening, because they did that weird finish or whatever, right?
Yeah. If that's what's going to happen, if that's one of the 2 announcements, yes, that's definitely going to be part of the reason for it. And meanwhile, I'm thinking they should just be combining the men's title and doing the exact same thing on Raw and SmackDown, because the tag division is so depleted on the main roster.
They have too many titles.
I don't agree with that, only because I'll compare it to New Japan, where they have even more titles and they can make them all matter. The problem isn't the amount of titles; it's the fact that they don't pay attention to.
But the problem is New Japan doesn't even agree with you, because they just got rid of one of those.
They got rid of one of them, but they still have a lot more titles.
Sure, but that goes to show you that even they were like, we don't need this one. We have these other 2 that we can promote to this spot.
Well, how much of that has to do with the fact that with the pandemic, they can't travel the way they were going to? So a lot of that has to do, in my opinion, that's what it looks like to me.
I would agree with you if it was the U.S. title they were combining with the world title, but that title is still available.
Active.
They combined the
Intercontinental and the world title,
which was in Japan. So to me, that tells me that they were like, we have too many titles. We need to get rid of at least one. And they just chose to get rid of that one because Kota Ibushi already had both.
I still feel like it doesn't matter for the amount of titles. It's the amount of attention you give to them. And if New Japan felt they couldn't give enough attention to it, then okay, great, I get it.
Yeah.
WWE's problem is not that there's too many titles. It's the fact that they have poor booking and they don't know how to book even if they had 3 titles, they wouldn't know how to book around them properly.
That is a good point right there. Yeah, I will give you.
One last thing I want to cover before we sign off for the day is that in Maryland, they announced yesterday that they're going to start allowing 50% attendance. The reason that becomes important, not so much for the live tours of the other brands we've mentioned so far, but ROH, their head office is basically Baltimore. That's where they've been doing all their tapings. That's where they do a lot of their big specials. So would ROH be one of the first promotions to get live attendance? it's arguable because ROH has been very good at being careful about everything. They seem to really promote the fact that they were careful about COVID, and they actually discussed the possibility of COVID on the air. And other than Drew McIntyre, I don't think WWE's ever mentioned it.
No, AEW has.
AEW has, but they also haven't had as many issues of it.
Right, because they're outdoors too. That's a huge benefit right there. Sure. Yeah. Outdoors in Florida, where the weather never dips below 45, pretty much.
Well, you got to keep in mind that Florida is, at least viewed from Canada, one of the worst states when it comes to the amount of COVID issues there are.
Oh, it is. But when you're doing an outdoor show and you're testing all the wrestlers and they're not there every week and the fans are sitting socially distanced and Tony Khan brought up, they have not had a single
incident
case traced from the fans and such. Now, I don't know how true that is or isn't, but that isn't, it's definitely minimal. So that definitely works. Whereas with ROH, I imagine they'd be doing it indoors. Let me put it to you this way. If it were up to Sinclair, I think they would do this, but I think they don't really care about what ROH does. So I think the management there will just continue to do what they've been doing.
Yeah, I think that's about fair. And then the other thing is they're booking their 19th anniversary show. I tried to find out a rundown of the card that's coming up, but it's there's only two that I can mention from what I found. Roosh is defending the title against Jay Lethal, and then EC3 has a grudge match against Jay Briscoe. So,
interesting.
ROH.
They got bigger problems than all of that stuff because they've still got this Kelly Klein lawsuit, which we saw. For people that don't know, she was, what was it, $12,000 a year?
Yeah, that's what we saw from 2018, I think it was.
Mercury is suing them now for the same stuff, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be big for them. There might not be a real case. We don't know. But it's news for us as fans, and it could become problematic for our ROH. We don't really know how serious these lawsuits are going to be for them.
Right.
Especially because you just mentioned Sinclair. They might brush it off and say, I don't care, and pay them off. And
as we talked about before, I'm still not sure because Kelly Klein was technically an independent contractor working other places. So but that was, looking at that salary, my goodness, that was.
It's either a sign that the women aren't paid very well, or Klein wasn't paid very well, or ROH wrestlers in general aren't paid all that well.
I think it was a sign, the first one. I think because the women were not and obviously, for all the stuff AEW's women division gets, those women are at least getting paid well, and the division produces good matches. The Ring of Honor treated that division like crap for years.
I feel like a lot of it was the fact that they didn't have much of a roster to depend on. They had Kelly Klein and then maybe three other people. They were keeping the man-eater. What was her name? The one that was with
Maria Manic.
Maria Manic. She was developed as a character, but she never got in the ring with any of the women before the pandemic. As far as I recall, she got in the ring with Billy Ray, of all people.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you could argue they didn't have a lot of talent, and that's been one of the problems with AEW too, but AEW has managed to build a roster with talented people on it, and those people were available. You can't tell me that, or most of them were at least. Maybe Ty Conti wasn't, but others were Shida was available. Nyla Rose was
back in the day. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. They couldn't get anybody?
It's not, maybe they couldn't afford it. I really don't know. It's tough to say. Without knowing the rest of the roster's pay or the rest of the women's pay. I can't really say it's low or not. It seems low, but I don't have nothing to compare it to. Maybe Jay Lethal's only making $13,000 a year. I don't believe that to be the case, but you never know what might be.
If he is, he's the most loyal man in the history of wrestling, staying there all those years.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Though apparently not the most loyal person in the metro. So, yeah, we'll end it there on that note because I have to get to work because it's Wednesday morning, right?
Yawn.
Yeah. No, it's
early morning.
Yeah, it's 11:16 p.m. I gotta get to bed.
I gotta go beat Mario 64 early in the morning.
Classic game.
Great game.
Well, anything you want to discuss quickly before we sign off, Mr. Occult Icon?
Well, last night on Dark, AEW totally redeemed themselves by delivering QT Marshall versus Fuego del Sol in a magnificent match that had been. All right, let me put it to you this way. This match was for people like me who watch all of the side stuff, right?
Okay.
That includes Being the Elite and Sammy Guevara's video blog, where Fuego del Sol is a main character who's been trying to get a job in AEW for months, and he keeps getting bullied and taunted by QT Marshall, who, by the way, is a heel now. He turned on Dustin Rhodes Sunday.
Fascinating.
Fascinating stuff. So they've been building this for months. QT has been dodging him. QT even got Glacier to prevent Fuego from having a match between the two of them.
Glacier stopped a guy named Fuego.
Yes. He cooled him off.
Yep.
Cooled him off. Something good. Finally, Tony Khan got involved. He made the match for Dark last night.
Love that Tony Khan on-screen character. Super riveting.
Yeah, he did it in one of those two Tony videos too on Guevara's blog. It was great. You would have given this whole thing -5 stars if you watched it. You would have.
Were there flips as well?
In this, no, actually in the match, no. I'm talking about the build. You would have given the build. Do you count a tornado DDT as a flip?
It depends on the setting.
Yeah. So the big thing in the build had been Fuego's claimed he was the master of the tornado DDT.
Okay.
But whenever he wrestled on Dark or Dynamite, he never actually hit the move because he's a job guy. He loses all the matches. So QT would taunt him about that. So they do this match. Mm-hmm. It's actually a really good match because they're both talented guys. They just aren't pushed. And Fuego actually hits the tornado DDT, and Excalibur and Taz go nuts. The crowd goes nuts, and QT rolls out of the ring after he gets hit with the move. The veteran move rolls out of the ring. Fuego, he rolls him back in. He goes for another one. He slips on the ropes. It may have even been a deliberate slip.
Sounds like it.
Or it was a fortuitous one, but he slips and he flies right into QT, hitting him with a diamond cutter. He picks him up, diamond cutters him again, and wins the match. So Fuego hit the move, but QT was smart enough to roll out. And then he gets caught with the move, and it is eternal sadness for all us Fuego del Sol fans out there. But it was great. For what it was great.
So from an English-speaking, or I could speak French from Canada, Fuego del Sol. Did I used to drive a Pontiac Fuego del Sol at some point?
No, stop it.
It's not a Sunfire. It's not what it translates.
By the way, Fuego, I'm not sure what it translates. Sunfire, is it?
That's what I'm saying. Pontiac Sunfire.
That might be it there. Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, Fuego is the only luchador to ever come from Mobile, Alabama. That's all I can really say about it.
Is he related to Hardcore Holly?
No. He hasn't ever sandbagged Brock Lesnar.
Got sandbagged by Brock Lesnar.
No, I believe, isn't the story that Brock tried to powerbomb Bob and Bob was like, I'm not going to go up for him, and he ended up getting dropped on his neck?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Bob, I just want to be honest with you if you're listening. It was your own fault.
Sounds like it. I don't know the whole story. I don't remember it all. All I know is I was a pretty big fan of Bob Holly at the time. His gimmick, it wasn't main event, but it was solid mid-card stuff, and I really enjoyed it.
You know, it was funny when Coach and I were speculating on the surprise person, and, you know, Cody had done an interview where he talked about the surprise guy in AEW was somebody who had been very important to his career, and Coach was like, oh, man, Bob Holly is coming back. And I was just like, if he came out on that show, I would turn it off immediately and not watch it again.
Yeah, not very much Hall of Fame worthy, but then again, Coco Beware's in the Hall of Fame, so maybe.
That makes Christian Hall of Fame worthy right there.
I would say that he is, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, he's gonna get in. He's gonna get in about 10 years now, as opposed to
when his contract's up.
But yeah.
Well. Anyways, I want to take off. So thank you very much again, Cult Icon. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. Send your comments and tell me how terrible I am for not liking AEW in the comments section here.
Hey, send your comments about how terrible I am for not liking WWE.
I feel maybe it's the circles I go to, but I feel like there's more people that are like you than there are like me.
Who cares? We need to get the heat on both of us here.
Well, you're an asshole, so that makes up for it.
I'm going to get heat too. I was hard on the explosives. They're coming after me too, man.
Are there anyone defending the explosives?
I'm sure there's got to be somebody out there.
Well, I just want to congratulate you for having a matching shirt and hat for your Whalers fandom.
Yeah.
My April Fool's Day, very random 1986 slasher movie that no one ever really knows.
Bring back the Whalers. Move them back. We're bringing back the NHL on ESPN. Bring back the Whalers.
And check out the Whalers references in Kevin Smith movies.
And bring back the Nordiques, too.
Okay, now we are signing off. Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.